crisis, despair, emergency, uninhabitable, overcrowded, wait, languish, billions, waste, intervention. For 2 decades I've reported on Indigenous Australia, and these words have been in high rotation in my copy. They're really brutal words, delivered with such regularity in our media cycle that they become normalised in the mainstream media. They're powerful words. They should alarm, they should dismay, in fact they should anger you. But they don't. They become weaponised in our political debate. They're being used in our discussions, and they really paint a picture of hopelessness and intractability. They sound like they're describing another country. They don't sound like they're describing our country, but they are. And to the many people who circle in the media in Melbourne and Sydney, our mainstream media circles predominantly there. They are used very flippantly, describing what I think is a very real, serious emergency in this country. I've used these words in my copy for many years because they are true. Storytelling depends on honesty and truth-telling, and that's what I've endeavoured to do in my 20 years in journalism. But I fear that in the height of telling these stories of despair, we've made the dangerous mistake of at times failing to tell the bigger story. How did we get here? Who lives in the houses that are so broken that many in this room would consider them uninhabitable? Could it be possibly true that billions are spent on Indigenous affairs, and yet so many Indigenous people are living in overcrowded squalor? How is that the case? And if it is the case, who's to blame? All stories need a villain, right? Who's responsible? The media has been a player, I think, in what is a sick boom-bust cycle of trauma reporting. You know the drill. There's an emergency, there's a spike of crisis reporting. I have been at the end of this. Housing overcrowding in remote communities, a convergence of interest all of a sudden. There's a flurry of stories, a flurry of activity. A band-aid is occasionally delivered by some level of government, and then the caravan moves on. People move on. It's become a ritual, like night follows day. I reported intensely on the Northern Territory intervention at the end of the Howard government. Now, much has been written about that very bleak period for Indigenous people. It was a time of utter despair and of fear. I've spoken to MPs who, at the time, admit and now concede, in fact many of them in the Howard government, very high-profile people, that it was a crude and frightening way to conduct what was ostensibly meant to be a project to help children. Remember? That was the idea. That was the project here. That was what they were trying to do. That was what it was sold as. And at the heart of that story was housing. Housing unsafe to protect children, where design was so out of step with the local culture, with the local needs, that it was literally putting lives at risk. The power of good journalism is about telling the full story, the story behind the story. While I could name and shame here, I won't, although I do believe that my own profession needs to live here, needs to more deeply engage with Aboriginal Australia and with disadvantage. Stories on Indigenous disadvantage or on disadvantage more broadly, many of you I know work across the sector, not just in Indigenous affairs, will never be clickbait. In fact, it will never drive numbers to websites, and I think the disruption of the media is really creating a huge issue for us. It's never going to drive numbers to websites, so it poses some serious challenges as to how we will continue reporting that shines a light on disadvantage that needs shining. Let me tell you some good news. My speech today might start bleak, but don't despair, because the truth is there is a real cause for optimism, and I mean that this boom-bust interest in Indigenous affairs and in disadvantage, where the caravan always moves on, could be shifted. Increasingly we're seeing a shift with the more diverse media putting these issues on the agenda. Things are changing. It's subtle, but things are changing. That's the great paradox. The disruption poses both challenges and, I think, opportunities. Rather than coming in occasionally and trying to tell a sensationalist story and then losing interest, more and more ordinary Australians are demanding a real engagement with these stories and with Aboriginal Australia. The Uluru Statement from the Heart and the public polling showing Australian voters are positive about recognising Indigenous Australians in the Constitution and establishing a voice to Parliament demonstrate this. Now you might ask, I'm just preempting your questions because we can't actually talk here. You might ask, what's that got to do with housing and disadvantage? I reckon it has quite a lot to do with it actually. If we've reached a point where, at least according to polling by Essential, where a majority also supports a treaty with Indigenous Australians, that's according to public polling, this means that strong, healthy, remote communities is something Australians consider key to Australia. People consider this fundamental to the kind of country they want to build, the kind of country they want to be proud of. I want to take you to that Essential polling because I reckon it's really fascinating if you drill down, which is one of my favourite things to do. The strong majority of the sample, I think it was 1,097 respondents, in fact 70% said they support constitutional recognition. 33% of that cohort were of the view that achieving the change is a priority, while 37% support the change but didn't nominate it as a high priority. Just 18% said they don't support the change, and 12% said they aren't sure, which is not surprising. I reckon that's remarkable in many ways. On top of this, the story of remote Australia is being told more and more too. While just 1.4% of Australia's population lives in remote areas, 18.4% of Indigenous people do. So that's the numbers. Disproportionately as Indigenous Australians in remote Australia. In remote areas, Aboriginal people are more likely, of course, to maintain histories that have allowed them to maintain connections to land, as researcher Hannah Robinson from Monash University has noted. So the notion that Australians don't care has been proved, I think, to be out of step with the reality. The truth is Australians do care. They care very much. And this is a real game changer. If Australians care, then our governments must seek to reflect that care. I recently had an experience that I think is worth noting or sharing with you all, with a very, very prominent Aboriginal woman. It really stayed with me and I think it's worth sharing. I won't name her because I haven't asked her permission and I don't think it's appropriate. But she's an incredible, formidable woman who has spent her life working for her people and also for equality. She's a leader, she's tireless, but she spent her life working on Indigenous affairs. She shocked me because she took me aside, it's a bit odd, she said, I need to speak to you. And she thanked me for dedicating a lot of my career to covering Indigenous affairs. I thought it was really odd that she would thank me. And I put to her that this was not something I should be thanked for. In fact, I think it's, the responsibility for any Australian citizen to take an interest in their country in whatever way they find that to be the way that it manifests. But the fact that she thought it important to thank me, just little old me, made me realise that we've got a real disconnect here. Anyone who commits to telling these stories that have been marginalised by our mainstream media, and I've been in the mainstream media, I'm not at the edge of the media, I'm at the centre of the mainstream media, I think says the biggest story about neglect, systemic neglect. I think we need to change the discourse here and tell these stories more and more, and without editorial leadership, it's not going to happen. I want to return to a subject which I think needs to be explored, and I know many of the speakers at this conference will do that, and that's mismanagement. While so much of the narrative, I think, that's taken hold is centred around dysfunction in remote communities or Aboriginal communities and responsibility that must be taken in Aboriginal communities, how about the failure of successive governments and bureaucracies to deliver tangible changes on the ground? How about that mutual responsibility? At the Garma Festival, Yothu Yindi Foundation boss Denise Bowden lashed out at the Northern Territory and the Commonwealth governments, accusing them of dining out on the back of Aboriginal misery. she argued powerfully that Aboriginal people are prisoners to incompetence and maladministration by governments that spend on urban centres and tourists instead of tackling rampant disadvantage. Her words stung. She left everyone in that room uncomfortable, and I'm bringing that discomfort here because I think sometimes discomfort is what we need to start thinking a little deeper. She took aim at the Northern Territory government and the Commonwealth, which she said had responsibility for the NT, and they do, and for the rivers of gold that the GST formula sent to Darwin. Now, this issue of spending money meant to be used for Indigenous disadvantage into more middle class, or let's call it for what it is, whiter suburbs, perhaps in Darwin, was an issue that my old newspaper, the Australian newspaper, once called the greatest scandal in contemporary Aboriginal affairs. I know the Northern Territory government contests the claims made by Denise Bowden. In fact, I've spoken to them about this on radio. It's worth listening to the interview. My job is to say it's time to shine a light on the money. Follow the money. Let's seek more and more transparency from all layers of government to demonstrate just how much of the money that we hear, lots of big numbers that make some people cynical about spending, how this lands in communities, who benefits from this money. Big, scary figures create the impression that it's a lot. But I've got to say, I've been to many remote communities over many years, including recently, and I've not seen the rivers of gold. So I wonder, where's the money going and where's the transparency? It's an issue that actually was raised by the Minister a little earlier, transparency. Where is the transparency? I want to shift the conversation to something Kevin Rudd once called the blame game, but I see this blame game at multiple levels. I'm going to start with this one. I bet you've heard this. If you haven't, you've mixed in very good circles, but I bet you have. Aboriginal people don't look after their houses. These are the sorts of comments that Indigenous Australians have had to endure. It's the casual racism imbued in a comment like this that I think stains us as a country. Just think about it. Overcrowding and dilapidated housing has been a remote Australian story we have been telling for decades. But the reality has been that some of the housing models brought to remote Australia have not reflected the needs of the community. It's something that the NT Minister was talking about. Houses that are they just don't make any cultural sense. I've been in them and I've thought, why would you build this here? Many of these communities don't follow a nuclear family structure, and the housing needs are not easily transferred as they have been badly done for so long. I'll give you a good example of this blame game being exposed as false by a survey provided to the Prime Minister's own department. Under the Community Housing and Infrastructure Program CHIP, the Fixing Houses for Better Health surveys found that only, and I'm just going to be dramatic about this, think about this figure, only 9% of household faults are caused by tenants. So that's a survey that found 9%. That's every time things break down, and some of this stuff, I know that you're experts here, not me, but I've seen it, can be quite dangerous to people. You know, when the sewage doesn't work in your house, when things are literally broken down. Now, the misconception that Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander families cause the majority of damage and deterioration to remote Indigenous housing needs to be corrected. That's what the report said, that's not me. I'm not saying you need to correct it. The report to the Prime Minister's department said, you need to correct this. This isn't happening. This isn't based on the truth. So even when the facts don't back it, such as the distortion in the debate, 54.5% of public housing dwellings in the Northern Territory are overcrowded. And work from the Menzies School of Health Research to be discussed at this conference, I wish I could be here the whole week, can I say, shows that this is having a serious effect on Indigenous families. In a room like this, with people as knowledgeable as you all are, I think many of you will have by now read Bruce Pascoe's book, Dark EU, Agriculture or Accident, which seeks to untangle colonial myths from historical truths. Put your hand up if you've read it. I knew it. More of you need to read it though, so I've given you some homework from this speech. For me, I'll tell you why. This is a watershed piece of work. It exposes the fiction that Indigenous people were purely hunter-gatherers. Indeed, Pascoe provides compelling evidence that at the time of colonisation, Australia's Indigenous people were also agriculturalists and farmland and formed villages. That means houses for thousands of years in this country. Bruce Pascoe asks the question, why aren't we telling Australian children of the success and achievements of Aboriginal Australia? I want to pose this question, here today, because it has an effect on everything we know, and it upends everything we've been told. It actually means that our whole story is based on, I'm going to call it out, a lie. It goes to what you're all here to discuss, housing, and demonstrates that we've always had housing in this country. Housing is not new, it's not something that Europeans brought to this country. Housing has been fundamental to our story for thousands of years. Read the book. So how we view housing must therefore be completely rethought. There's another blame game worth mentioning here. I mentioned him, former Prime Minister Kevin Rudd. He promised to fix it. But we're in 2019 and I don't know what your experiences have been, but I have a pretty strong feeling it hasn't been fixed. And that is our federation. Every time we endure a long standoff and blame shifting between the territory or the states and the Commonwealth, there's always the same dance. I could write the 10 stories without it even happening. Like, I don't even need to witness it. I can predict the next commentary. It's like a blink game. Who's going to blink first? How long will we put the next agreement up for? Will it just be another extra year for people to sweat it, to not be able to actually manage or plan or do anything? Now, there has been some improvements there. It's a little bleak. But fundamentally, it's the soundtrack of our federation, and it hasn't been fundamentally fixed. Even if we've seen some good leadership at a Commonwealth and at a state territory level, where some people have sought to at least make longer-term investments that can actually make people have plans and lives and actually have a future that they can think about beyond this short-termism. There's another theme in my speech, and that's diversity in our media. Now, I think it's true to say that the media is a very Anglo-Saxon, middle-class thing. I know, because I've worked in it. In fact, I think sometimes I'm the only public school kid in the room. It's true. You know, you've heard about some of the suburbs people have grown up in. I think sometimes that diversity we don't talk enough about. Life experience, what people have seen, where people have lived. Diversity is about perspectives, and I've been pondering the way that this increasingly professionalised industry may be skewing the perspectives, the things that we tell. Australia's obsession with housing is real. We love housing. We are obsessed with housing in this country. Anytime I walk past people's desks, they're secretly looking at Domain. This is what we do, right? People love housing in this country. But the stories of housing that we're telling are not necessarily the ones that are affecting people at the fringes of our community. You know this better than anyone. House prices and value of housing has become the dominant story, and that's okay. It's unrealistic to think that will change. People will always seek to take an interest or read stories about things that affect them, and that's often where the majority lies. Don't seek to change something that exists for a certain reason. But I strongly believe that with diversity comes the drive to tell stories outside of that narrow prism. Doesn't mean that part will change. I think people will remain obsessed with Domain, but it's about the other stories we're telling at the same time. So, I'm going to sort of switch course here and move to what I think is an important conversation we're having here about the current political landscape, right? We just heard from a new minister in a new re-elected government. You've heard from the Northern Territory Minister. Now, I'm going to call something out that I know has been happening for many months now, which was that you all thought that there would be a short Labor government at the moment, right? That's just... Everyone thought it. In fact, I bet the minister thought it too. You did? Oh, you and Scott Morrison. All right. I know a lot of the coalition front bench thought it. I know it. They told me. In fact, senior members still say to me, no, I'm not going to pretend and do revisionism. I didn't think we were going to win. I do know that the Prime Minister thought he was going to win, right? That's absolutely true. And a few of his supporters, but not many. So you all thought Bill Shorten would be here. He's not here. He didn't win the election. I'm not telling you news, but I think it's worth just reflecting on that. So I was looking at your poll earlier before, and I thought maybe I should take over the national polling, because polling's dead, polling's stupid, don't trust polling. But I do think that the current political landscape has to be discussed in a different way. We've got now a third-term coalition government. The May election has rewritten some rules, but it has actually reinforced some political home truths in my view. When the Prime Minister claimed he always believed in miracles on claiming victory on election night on May the 18th, what struck me was that the result had been anything but a miracle. Now, this is not to undermine the concept of miracle or to begin a theological debate that I'm not going to win, but what we saw happen on May 18 was not an aberration, it was a coherent response. It was coherent to an electorate that had made up its mind that it didn't want to change everything. Because that's what Bill Shorten told everyone that he wanted to do. He wanted to change everything. Australians thought, no, we don't want to change everything. So they made a coherent decision, which was, I don't want to change everything. They didn't want to take a risk, essentially. So Scott Morrison essentially defied years of dodgy polling and public expectations too, to lead the coalition to what many have described almost universally as a shock election victory. My thesis today is that there is in some ways nothing shocking about what we've seen. It's not a shock. What the election result provides is a potential period for quiet policy possibility. I use quiet deliberately here. Quiet achievement. If the policy agenda is not jammed, right, the government has the potential to develop clear and fresh policy responses that garner public approval, to build a consensus. Every person in this room has the ability to make a case for changes and develop something that builds Australia. If the cupboard isn't overfilled, there's room to talk and to talk loudly. The Prime Minister talks about the quiet Australians, but what he's really trying to deliver now is a period of quiet government. He is accurately determined, and I think he is dead set right, that Australians are sick of the noise coming out of Canberra. I'm obsessed with Canberra and I'm sick of the noise coming out of Canberra. So, he's nailed that. So, he's determined that they would be delighted if the government keeps off the front pages and focuses instead on good outcomes and good delivery, but actually starts doing stuff. That's why we elect them. So the big message, I think, the takeout from where we're at today in the political landscape, where we're standing, is that people expect you to keep it simple. Labor got itself into all sorts of self-inflicted pain by developing a bold and, according to their political opponents, radical policy agenda. You can contest that, but that's how it was painted. Premised on killing franking credits and curbing negative gearing. The coalition offered very little in the way of pain. The signature policy the coalition took to the election, it's now legislated, the 10-year tax plan that Labor spent the campaign trying to paint as unfair, it didn't work. No one believed Labor that it was unfair. I'll tell you why. Because there weren't any quantifiable losers. Sure, higher income people got a bigger slice, but there weren't any obvious losers. The coalition has kept its message simple and clear since the arrival of Scott Morrison. Stability, no dramatic policy change, and jobs. Don't forget the message of jobs. What's crystal clear is that this government and that governments, once elected, can change the country. But voters generally only want to change the government. What Labor asked them to do was to change the country, change the government, to change everything. The Hawke-Keating period demonstrates that the case for reform is best made from government, not from opposition. So does this mean that no opposition will ever be bold or brave or whatever you want to call it, whatever language makes sense for you, enough to make a big target again? Well, never say never, because John Hewson did it, he was smashed at the ballot box, now Bill Shorten has done it, the same has happened to him. I think the lesson is that bold policy can be offered, of course it can, it's happened before, but not all at once, and not with that many quantifiable losers. You also need to build a consensus. One area where the government did, of course, focus was on housing. While the campaign was focused almost entirely on, tax, housing was the other sleeper issue, and you know it. At the 11th hour, I went to the coalition launch in Melbourne. I was there. I took my 10-year-old too. She has a really fun time with me. Anyway, we'll talk about what we do to our children later. At the 11th hour, they announced this new policy, you'll recall, was the only really big policy that was announced other than the tax cuts. And that was the first home loan deposit scheme. From January 1, some first home buyers will be able to purchase a house, as you know, with as little as 5% deposit. Now, it's not my job here today to analyse whether that's a good or bad policy. Not my business. What I can tell you though, without a shadow of doubt, is that it demonstrated powerfully that this was a vulnerability the government had identified. Why did they all of a sudden bring out housing policy? It's because housing was the other sleeper issue in this election. Clearly Australia's housing policy, from the failure of younger Australians to get into the market, which has been a story we've been telling for the last 10 years, to house prices and rents rising ahead of incomes, to mortgage stress, to the even bleaker stories, including Australia's shameful homeless numbers, are all issues Australians care about and want solutions on. I think it's important here to pause and reflect on that. Let's just look at one example where there's been a shift, and I think it demonstrates how things can change very quickly when you tell a deeper story. Back to my idea of a deeper story being told. Wall to wall, we've seen a culture shift on, for instance, the New Start payment. Inside and outside of the government, we've seen this. Now, the government is still opposed to an increase in the New Start payment. Absolutely, that's the government's position. But I've seen a massive shift in the party room on this. MPs have come out one by one. They've told me, they've said it publicly, they've said it privately, that they've had a change of heart. The fact that this has happened demonstrates something pretty fundamental about storytelling, about building a case and consensus. Business, welfare, individuals, ordinary Australians coming to the conclusion that something seems amiss here. Do you think it's because MPs are worried that they're going to lose their seats because unemployed people might vote against them? I don't think so. I've got a feeling that's not what's made this policy shift happen for some people. I think it's because the stories are being told properly. For the first time, we're actually hearing the stories of 55-year-old women who've worked their entire lives, can't get a job now, living on New Start. We're hearing the stories. We're putting faces to the stories. We understand more deeply what it means. I think when you see those shifts, it shows that our politicians actually have got the capacity to listen. Sometimes we feel like, do they listen? I think they do have the capacity to listen, and they're listening very carefully. So watch this space. Because while Scott Morrison has a newfounded authority we haven't seen in recent years, and I haven't seen it, after beating the odds and delivering the, unwinnable election, which he knew he'd win, but no one else seemed to. I think he has the potential for amazing policy reform, but equally a potential dangerous perfect storm. If he doesn't start articulating a policy agenda that's bigger, his colleagues are going to start doing it for him. And we've already seen it with policy breakouts. I mentioned New Start, but there are others. Superannuation is another one where there's a breakout. Nuclear power is another. A number of these MPs, and I've talked to a lot of them, tell me they don't want to waste this third opportunity they've been gifted by voters. They don't want to die wondering. Government MPs have policy ideas, and they want to be able to pursue them. I think that basically explains the dynamic here. Now, I want to move to something else here, which is the fact that we have the Coalition's first ever Assistant Minister for Community Housing, Homelessness and Community Services, Luke Howard, who has spoken today. We also have Michael Sukkar. So for the first time, we've got these dedicated ministers in these key roles who have been charged by Scott Morrison to do work here. I know the sector is excited about that. I know that. I've spoken to many of you, and you should be. You should be very excited because it provides the most obvious indication we have from the government that they are prepared to talk and develop the evidence-based policy solutions you need to deliver fairness in this country. And I use the word fairness very deliberately because one message from this election that I don't think was delivered, that some people weirdly think was, but was not, I am certain of this, is that Australians don't want fairness. They didn't want Bill Shorten's version of fairness, but Australians very much believe in fairness. So the government, and I think Scott Morrison gets this, They get that's not the message here. The message is how to extrapolate that message, how to actually understand what fairness might mean. It's not a universal, of course, understanding. We all have different ideas about what that means. But the idea that the government hasn't got that, I think, is misconstrued, or the idea that the electorate behaved in some kind of selfish way that means that they don't care about fairness is a load of, it's wrong. So what now? I want to end on talking about bubbles. I once did another speech and I got bubbles out for this, but it was a bit elaborate, so I haven't brought my bubble machine. But I want to talk about bubbles. You start blowing bubbles on stage, people do question your sanity, I am saying. The PM is big on talking about the Canberra bubbles. That's why I'm talking about bubbles. The big question, I suppose, is for this room, which bubble will the new Morrison government and cabinet decide to float in? Which policy bubble? How many bubbles can it make and keep going and spinning? And how do they straddle the divide between the north and the south, which is a real electoral issue, and redefine fairness in a way that Australians sign up to and believe in, and also straddle this idea or this false dichotomy between fairness and aspiration, as if you've got to choose one or the other. Since when did you have to not be fair to aspire? I don't get that. I reckon I can give you a pretty good steer on where this is going to go. Thousands of words have been written about a pretty light policy agenda from the government. It's fair to say that while there was a truckload of local announcements, infrastructure announcements, there were car parks, there were freeways, it was sparse in the national, I think, agenda-changing space. Now that we've got that big tax package through Parliament, with Labor support, I might add, after a bit of torture on their part, they seem to be talked to about that, but it's all been delivered. The big question is, which you're all going to be dealing with here in the next couple of days, what a great week it will be, is what might Australia look like in 3 years from now? How does Scott Morrison want to redefine Australia? All Prime Ministers want to do this. And I think more than anyone in recent times, he's the guy that wants to do it most. I think much of this is yet to be determined. I'm not going to pretend to predict crystal ball stuff, but I can tell you this. This is a very pragmatic Prime Minister. This is a Prime Minister who always chooses pragmatism over ideology. He's defied expectations time and time again. I think it's best not to underestimate him where he may take the government. He wants to be a centrist. He wants solutions. Talk to people about the way he handled, for instance, his time in the social affairs portfolio. This is a person who tries to read the room and tries to understand what might be going on. I think this is a government that does want to do something in this space. We saw the indication with that announcement during the election campaign. I think we're going to see more. I think there is time for optimism that this quietness, that this language around quiet Australians might be an actual opportunity. Because the noise we've heard over the last few years has been just that. Vacuous noise, like bad 90s music. So if they want to deliver the solutions, how do we do it in partnership as a country? Where smart people get together with the government, the bureaucrats, people on the ground, people that actually live in the houses, and come up with solutions to change Australia, to make it the country we've always been proud of. A country that has had housing for thousands of years. Thank you so much.